Okay, so this would be 11, where are we at? 5. They call it inventory valuation. So there's a couple different methods to do this. There's 3 different methods. The first one is first in, first out. Now this is where it kind of gets confusing. Okay? Then you got last in, first out. And then you're going to do a weighted average, basically. So these are your 3 capabilities of doing what we're going to talk about. When they say first in, first out, last in, first out, this does not have anything necessarily to do with when did you get it and when are you taking that product and moving it out. So it's not like, okay, we're going to take this and we got it on Monday, and then we got another load of whatever we're talking about on Thursday. So when they say first in, first out, we're not talking necessarily that then we're going to rotate that Monday stuff so it's automatically out first. Now most companies are going to do that no matter what. But again, it all depends on what you're selling or what you're bringing in, right? Does it really matter if my lawnmower that I got on Monday gets behind the ones that I got on Thursday? Probably not a whole lot, right? But my milk probably makes a big difference, right? Ice cream. Yeah, so there's different things, you know, if I have fruit or if I have something like that. So naturally, when they are talking about all of these things, who's ever in charge of receiving your shipments and then saying what's going to go out first, they're going to rotate all that stuff. Okay, so a big part of this, again, when I was in the restaurant business, a big part of this was alcohol. Beer goes bad, right? When your beer goes bad, people don't want it. So you got to rotate that kind of stuff, especially if it is something that was kind of out of the ordinary kind of beer, you know, like the foreign stuff, okay? So you'd always want to bring that to the beginning, and you don't want it to go skunky, okay? So there's another one. Same thing with milk, right? We definitely don't want to keep that one thing of milk and just keep shoving it towards the back, because, whoa, when you open that milk, that's nasty, right?
It's gonna be a treat.
Okay, yeah, it's going to be a treat for somebody. So, what does this really mean? When they're talking about this right here, they're talking about the prices. So, a lot of the times, they're talking about first in, first out. They're talking about what did I pay for the first things? What did I pay for the last thing, or the things that are in the middle? If I have a bunch of, let's say, screws or something. Okay? It really doesn't matter how long that screw sits in the main, or, you know, sits in the bin, because a screw is going to still work when we use it a year later or whatever, as long as it doesn't rust, right? So, but the screw business could have fluctuated a lot. And I have no idea if the screw business went into a problem during these last couple of years. But let's just say, just like everything else, it probably did, right? So let's just say that when we're talking about the first in, we're talking about what we actually paid for that first set of screws. And then we'd have some in the middle, right? Because of going through a month or whatever it happens to be. And maybe we purchased different things at that time too. Well, the price isn't always going to be the same. Or it's probably never going to be the same. So they would use certain things like this, first in, first out, or last in, first out, because of trying to figure out the grand total of what you're actually going to do, or what you would actually have as property. Okay, so the value of your inventory might be used to figure out your property taxes. The oldest stuff is what you would want to get rid of first, obviously, but one of the things that they talk about then is this, and they would abbreviate this as FIFO. So you would know what one that you would use. So we have FIFO, then we have LIFO. And you would know which one you're going to do. Now, for me to remember this, okay, it's always opposite of what it says. So when they talk about first in, first out, or first in and then last in, this tells me that I'm going to start with the last shipment. And what I'm talking about is the last money that I bring in. Here, when they do last in, this tells me that I'm going to do the first shipment in. Now, why would I want to do this? I'm basically going to pick something that's going to be advantageous for my company. Meaning that if the prices really rose in the last 3 years, but our very first shipment that we had was pretty normal, and then we went through that 3-year cycle because of the pandemic and everything, and now it's at the end, it's probably the highest it's been for a long time. I don't want to use that number, because if I take that number and multiply it by all of the things that I have in my stock, what's my price going to be? It's going to be really, really high, right? And so then if it's really, really high, I'd probably have to pay property taxes on that. And if I pay property tax on that, then it's going to be out of this world. So I'm going to basically try to pick the first shipment and use that number and do my calculations from that. So it's helping me, in a sense, I'm trying to cheat the system a little bit, right? I'm still telling them what I have in stock, but I'm manipulating the numbers a little bit to show them the good numbers instead of the bad numbers, right? And so that's where you would make that decision. And then this last one, and we'll go through this here in just a second. The weighted average is basically if it really fluctuated a lot. So you had some really low numbers, but you had some really, really high numbers. You want to work into that weighted average or right down the middle. So if you really go, or your product really went up and down and up and down, and again, it's not anything to you, but you know, when we went through the big gas prices because of the war, so maybe you got hit really hard that time. So that's when you would use the weighted average. Now, again, they're going to tell you specifically how to do this, but we're going to show you what to do. So, turn to page 494. But again, like I said, if they tell you to use FIFO, you're going to start with the last shipment numbers. If they tell you to do LIFO, you're going to go back and start to do with the first. So again, to me, it's always opposite of that first word. If they say first, you do the last. If they say the last, you do the first. And if you can keep that in your mind, then the math really isn't that hard. The math is kind of, it's kind of fun to me. But so, what we're going to look at, go down to page 494 on the very bottom for check your understanding. And notice what we have here. It says these units were purchased by OPC Company in February. So, notice the difference in prices, right? It's not extraordinary, but there is some difference, okay? So it says, assume the beginning inventory was 112 units and the ending inventory is 142 units. That right there doesn't really matter to you either. Okay? The only thing that matters between those two numbers is then what they're going to use if it's FIFO or LIFO. Okay, so in letter A, it says find the ending inventory's value on the FIFO basis. So again, in the FIFO, that tells me I'm going to start with my last shipment. So what you have to do then is you have to look at your ending inventory, and you know then in letter A, because of the ending inventory, it says my inventory was 142 for my ending inventory. Everybody see that? Sure. So basically, you're going to do a calculation to get to 142. But you're going to start with the last because they said it's FIFO. Okay, so find the ending inventory. So I'm going to go over to, I'm going to start at the end, which is 226. And it says on 226, 110 units we bought, we're at $36 per unit. So I'm going to start right there. 110 at $36. I'm going to basically punch this into my calculator and figure out what my total is.
3,960.
3,960. Now, how many do I need? I need 142 though, right? But we've only done 110. So how many are left? Or how many more do we need to calculate? We need to calculate 32 more. So if we do 32, if you go down to the next group, make sure you look at the dates though, okay? What's my next group?
60 units at 37.25.
Right, on 218 we had 60 at 37.25. Everybody see where I'm at there? Okay, so does this number fit into that amount of units that we had? 32 is under 60, right? So we can fit all 32 of them in that second to last buying stage where we had 32 of them at, what was the price again?
37.25.
37.25. So, everybody okay with what we're doing here? If this wasn't, or if this didn't fit into that second whole category, then you got to go to the third one, and the fourth one, and so on and so forth. Okay? If it does, don't worry that we don't use all 60 of them. Okay? We just have to end up with our ending inventory, which was 142. So, we punch this into our calculator and we get what?
1,192.
Even?
Yeah.
Perfect. Oh. Okay, now, from there, what do? We're going to take this and just add them up.
51.52.
51.52. This is my answer. So this
It's pretty easy.
is basically saying what? What does that mean though?
Value of your inventory.
This is the value of my inventory. So the value of my 142 units is 5,152. Okay?
Sure.
Make sense?
Sure.
All right, so look at B. Now, the only reason I want to show you B is because now you got to do it how many times? Now you're going to have to do it 3 times.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, now assume the beginning inventory. Never worry about the beginning inventory. You don't care about that. The ending inventory is 196. So, again, this is where it's kind of nice because if you continue, or like in these problems, you're going to use that same chart. So you know the first one is the same thing. I'm still going to do 110 of them at 36, and we already know what that is. So I'm still using all of them. Everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay, so how many do I have left?
86.
I got 86. I like to put that little number over there, just to see. Now, what was the second installment?
170 units. 61.
60 again, right? Go from the bottom again. So, we're going to do all 60 of them this time because we needed 86. The last time we only needed 32, so we took out of that 60. So 60 at, now we go back to this number, which was 37.25. But obviously don't copy down this answer because my math's different. So in my math here, yeah,
2,235.
okay? And now how many do I have left? So 60, and we had 86. So how many are left? 26 more. So 26 is going to be calculated at, what's my next pricing in the
37.
37 straight up?
Straight up.
For a grand total of?
962.
And then we're going to add them all together.
71.57.
71.57. So the only thing that we wanted to show the difference was, if you don't use all of them in that second category, you just got to go to the third, maybe the fourth, and keep on going and keep on going. That makes sense? So again, this one was FIFO, right? Or is this LIFO?
First, it was 5.
This was FIFO, so we went to the last shipment first, and that's where we started. Okay? So, in the next section, now we're going to go into LIFO. Okay? And again, we kind of already explained this, but now we're just going to start at the beginning. And again, this would have been if you could have recognized that, you had a better payment at the beginning than you did at the end. So again, if this is LIFO, we're going to do the same process, but now we're going to start at the beginning instead of the end. Make sense? Okay? So, on letter C, the beginning inventory was 12 units at $14.20 per unit. This is where you got to use the beginning inventory. Okay, so the beginning inventory is my first step. 12 units at $14.20. So this is where you use exactly what they gave you in the problem. Do the math. What do we get?
170.4.
Okay? Now, what does it say that we have to get to though? We're still going by the ending inventory, which is 32. So how many do I have left? 32. So 32 minus 12 basically is 20. Can I get all 20 of them in the next section? Start from the top though, not the bottom. So we can do all 20? At how much? $14.60. So grand total of 292, and then I'm going to add them together as long as we reach our goal.
462.40.
462.40.
Let's go.
Okay. So do you see the difference between the two? You're doing the same process, but when they talk about the initial inventory in the FIFO, it doesn't really mean anything to you. In the LIFO, you got to use that they give you. Okay? Whoa. You want to try E? Or are we okay?
I think we're good. Pretty good.
Okay, so let's just talk about units in D. The first one, obviously, we're going to use all 6. And then we're going to go to what? 32, right? And so the grand total would have been at what? 38, right? So how many is in my third unit? 38 minus what?
38 minus 32. 40.
Look at the things. So we used all 32 of the second one, right?
Oh, okay.
So 32 plus 6 gets me 38. So how many in my next unit? 11. Everybody see where we're getting 11? Because we're at 38, but we really need to get to 49. Okay? So you would have done basically what we did here in B, you would have just had another category. Okay? Make sense? Alright. You want to do the last one today, or wait till tomorrow and do the last one? The last one's probably the most math. Okay? We'll do that one tomorrow.
It's just workday Wednesday.
Workday. Alright, so this one is the weighted average. Yesterday we did LIFO and FIFO, right? LIFO was last in, first out. That really meant that you started with the beginning inventory. FIFO was first in, first out, which means you started with your last. We're on page 496. So the last one that we want to do is the weighted average one. And this is the most math. So again, why do we use the weighted average? We kind of talked about this a little bit yesterday, but you would use this if your the inventory amounts went up or varied a lot. So if you had a distortion of prices, you would use this so that it worked back to being even or in the middle. Okay? So remember what we did yesterday when we did our process? Well, in the weighted average, it's exactly what it says. You're going to take the average of all of the inventory that you have, the prices and everything. Okay, so after you get your weighted average, it's exactly what you think. You add them all up, you divide by the total number of whatever we're talking about, whatever your inventory is, and then you take that special price and do it to your ending inventory to figure out what you actually have. So it is easy, but it's probably the most math. The biggest thing that I want, so on letter E, let's look at this real quick. On letter E, it says the beginning inventory of 607 tires was valued at $201 per tire. Again, you have to use the beginning inventory in these ones too. What is the weighted average unit cost of the beginning inventory and July purchases to the nearest dollar? That's the other thing that you got to remember. After you do this and you do the whole process and you get your amount, because you added them all up and then divided, you got to round that number to the nearest dollar. Okay? This is the only one that you have to do it to, but you got to remember that. So in this one right here, again, you're going to start with your beginning inventory. So you're gonna do 607 at 201. So you do this, and then you gotta do all the other ones that they list for you there. Okay, so you just go through and you do the entire inventory that you have. 312,
That's just
6, 940, and 550.
What?
312, 208. 191, 202.
Johnson's like, man, that's an expensive tire. Ask John, he would know.
Never
Catch a break. You brought that break on yourself. So,
Yeah.
you would go through and you would do the math, okay? If you do all this, what do we get? What letter are we on? E or N?
E.
E.
62,280.
The grand total was?
Oh no, that's 516,303.
And how many tires did we have?
2,553.
Okay? So, you're gonna do this across, multiply all those, and then add that column, and add this column up. Okay? And then we're gonna take this 516 divided by the grand total of our inventory, which is 2553, for a grand total of,
202.23.
so 202.23. So again, if we round this to the nearest dollar, we'd get what? Just 202, right? It doesn't matter if it's up or down. And then, so then you gotta go back and you look and it says, what is the value of your ending inventory if it's 308? So then we're gonna take this times that 308. So basically, again, look, the number we're gonna use is basically the average of all those. Because here we have difference, we went from 208 to 199, and we're gonna use 202.
The very first one, I hit the wrong number, so it's all gonna be
It
wrong.
is.
It's gonna be wrong, because I hit the wrong number for the first one.
Well, they had 202 though,
Oh.
so I don't know how you left that out. So what's 202 times 308?
Oh, I just had it. 62,288.
288?
Yep.
So that would be my answer.
No?
I didn't think that's.
216.
216.
What are you guys doing today? 202 times 308.
Times 308.
62, 216.
I got 62.
222.
Oh, I guess I cut the decimals.
Yeah, don't keep the decimal. You got to round it. So how much was it?
62,000.
2 what?
216.
You guys are confusing today. Okay, so I don't know how Carson lucked out,
Yeah.
even though his first number. So
I didn't
again,
do the first one at all.
you go through and you can just do it. Yeah. So if you eliminate this, that probably still makes sense, but you just got to make sure that you're using all of them. Okay, and then obviously make sure that you round. Like I forgot. So look at the difference if you don't round, right? Even though it's only 23 cents, that was a big difference, right? And so that's where, again, you're talking about getting taxed. If we use Yah's number, it was 62, whatever, he's going to get taxed a lot more than the rest of us. Okay? So essentially, it's a lot like, well, I don't want to say a lot like what we did yesterday, but this one is basically a true average problem. The biggest thing here is this part right here. Is that you need to round to the nearest dollar. Okay? Do we need to go through F?
Do you really want us to go through F at this point?
Well, some of you, it sounds like we might need to go through F. But that's totally up to you. We can do it or not. We got lots of time.
I'm good. I'm good.
Okay? So, here is, did we show you the assignment for yesterday? So this is the second assignment. We'll have one other assignment too. I think they're both on the board over to your left. And if you wanna see the big version, there's the big version. Okay.